Hey readers, I am going to do my very first tag video. I'm excited about this. So this tag is called the Bookish Beginnings Tag. It was created by Lauren at Reads and Daydreams. You can look in the down below thingy to find the link to the original video. And there are a bunch of questions that are part of this tag, and I'm going to answer those questions, and then I will tag a few people at the end. So the first question is, what did you love to read as a child? Now as a child, there were no set of books that I was told, these are kids' books, you're allowed to read these, and these are adult books, you're not allowed to read these. So I kind of read all over the place. I read classics and adult books and kids' books and all kinds of things, but one kind of books that I loved as a kid are choose-your-own-adventure books, and I used to get these, any one I could find from the library, and just go through and put my thumb in a place, make a decision, read, figure out how I would die, go back, make every single possible choice to figure out all the different ways you could possibly die in the book. In fact, for my most recent birthday, I was given this as a gift, To Be or Not to Be, which is the story of Hamlet as a choose-your-own-adventure book. It's amazing. I haven't quite gone through all the different options in it yet. I've only gone through a few of the different endings, but it's so much fun, and you should definitely pick it up. The second question is, what was the first adult fiction that you read? And as I said, there were no books that were off limits for me as a kid, so I read all kinds of different things. So even at a very young age, I read things that were pretty adult. But the first books that I can remember thinking, whoa, these are adult, and I'm mature now because I'm reading these, were the Saint Germain series or novels by Chelsea Quinn Yarborough. I think the reason why they stood out as adult to me is because they were the first books that I was consciously aware that there were sex scenes in it, and that was cool. So the third question is, what was the first classic that you read, not because of school? And I started doing Shakespeare from a very young age, so I read a lot of Shakespeare plays, especially his histories and tragedies, from about the age of 7 or 8 on. I read almost all of them. But the first stories I remember picking up because I was oh, these are classics and, timeless, and I should really read these, were the Robert Louis Stevenson stories, so Treasure Island, Kidnapped, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I still love Robert Louis Stevenson so much. The next question is, what was the first book you read in a new favorite genre, or one that kind of set you off on reading a whole bunch of books in a new genre? And the book that I want to list in this genre is Richard Bach's Jonathan Livingston Seagull, because it set me off on, I just voraciously consumed all the books in that sort of spiritual guru genre of life lessons and metaphors. Everything by Paulo Coelho, for example. I've read all of his books, and Daniel Quinn as well. So that book really kind of for a couple years, I read all of that stuff. The next question is, what was the first book of literary prize literature you read? In other words, a book that you read because it won a prize. The first book that I actually sought out because it won a prize is the same as Lauren, the person who created this tag, actually, Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie. I remember hearing about it and thinking, oh, that sounds really interesting, I need to read it, so I grabbed it and I read it, and it was earthy, and it was weird, and it was at times really interesting. The writing style was so rich and so good that I picked up a bunch of other Salman Rushdie books, and I ended up discovering, because of that book, I ended up discovering Haroun and the Sea of Stories, which remains to this day one of my favorite children's novels ever. It's an amazing little story about stories, about why stories are important and why we should tell them. The next question is, what was the first piece of translated literature that you read? And for this, I think I would have to go with José Saramago's Blindness. I actually read that one first in Portuguese, and had a really hard time understanding it because José Saramago writes without any punctuation, and without any capitals and stuff. He just runs it all together, and at first it's just really, really hard to understand. So I went back and I had to read it in English so that I could try and understand what was actually going on, so then when I read it in Portuguese it made more sense. And that novel kind of traumatized me, for more than just the difficulty in understanding it, but also because it was really heavy and painful and dark. It was emotionally and viscerally painful. It's kind of A Clockwork Orange or The Wasp Factory, in that it's not it's not an enjoyable novel to read. It's an interesting novel to read. I'm glad I've read it, but it's not a fun experience reading that book. The last question is why I started Booktube and what it was like to upload my first video. I started doing Booktube stuff because I got on YouTube to try and create community, to meet other creators, and because I want to talk about things that are important to me. I want to talk about like metaphor and meaning and life and pain and suffering and stuff, a lot of stuff which is dealt with in literature, which I really enjoy talking about. And also because I've been really impressed by the community on Booktube, by how interactive it is and by how much people are, engaging with each other's content and creating stuff together, and I want to be a part of that, so I look forward to getting to know you guys. And as far as uploading my first video, I uploaded my first video to YouTube like a few months before I really started thinking about getting involved in Booktube. And my first video to YouTube was really nerve-wracking, but my first video to Booktube was just like, by now I'd been doing it for a little while, and so I was just excited to get involved in this process. So there you have it. That is the Bookish Beginnings tag. I would like to tag Lisa at City YA Books, Dylan at Books with Dylan, and Kayla at Bookadoodles. And you, if you're watching this and you want to make a video about the first experiences you had with these kinds of books. Adios.